Welcome to all. So in this session we will see what the concept of class. Okay, so you have to recall all your previous things whatever you have learned in your previous semesters. So you have to get the concept of encapsulation, you have to get the concept of polymorphism, inheritance, abstraction. Then you need to brush up the concept of creating the object, constructors, destructors, and all those concepts are required for this semester, also for this subject also. So Java, as it is a object oriented programming, so you need the concept of class, you need the concept of inheritance. Mainly you need to understand how can you extend or how can you inherit the properties of another class. You should know how to create the object, instance variable, how to create the instance variable, how to instantiate the thing. So you should know everything. So to understand the further informations which I am going to give in this particular subject, to understand it clearly, you need to get the ideas of your C++ subject also. Remember this. So that is the reason why in the initial stage only I said, and I asked everyone to refresh all your C++ concepts, because the syntax may differ but the concept remains same. Okay, so you don't have anything new here. But syntax, because as you are dealing with the Java language, so syntax definitely it will be different. But the concepts and the actual logic with respect to class, object, or inheritance, or polymorphism, everything, so it remains same. Okay, so the class fundamentals, let us start with the concept. The classes created in the preceding chapters primarily exist simply to encapsulate a main method. So that is the reason why I said before writing the main method, you were encapsulating it inside some class, isn't it? So I said you have to give the same name as a file name. The class name has to be very similar to the file name, so it has to be same, otherwise you cannot run the program. So in the initial videos I already mentioned it. So that means it is used just to encapsulate the main method, or to put the main method inside the class. That's it. Fine, encapsulation is the same thing, but for the explanation I was saying that you have to put the main method inside some class with some class name. Okay, which has been used to demonstrate the basics of the Java syntax. So it was just for the Java syntax. Now we will go in depth with respect to class concept. Okay, perhaps the most important thing to understand about a class is that it defines a new data type. So you are not understanding the sentence very first time. So in the previous semester also you have seen the same sentence in the textbook, isn't it? So it is nothing but you are creating some new data type. When you go for a class concept, ultimately you are going for new data type. Once it is defined, this new type can be used to create objects of that type. So you are creating the object of same type, whatever the data type you are creating using the class, the same type of object can be created. Thus a class is a template for an object, and an object is an instance of a class. Because an object is an instance of a class, you will often see the two words object and instance used interchangeably. So object or instance, okay, or and instance, so interchangeably they will be keep on using. Ultimately you can think of a class as a box. Okay, so you are creating the object for that box, means object is nothing but like a key. So if you want to access the content which is present inside the class, you need a key. So using this object or in this key, you are accessing the contents of that particular class. So you can imagine like that. Okay, so you can see the syntax here. So there is one class. See, class is a keyword, you have to remember this. Class is a keyword, you have to write as it is, and after that class and class name. So you can give any class name. Inside that you will be having type and instance variables and methods also. You can have some methods, you can have some instance variables. Okay, so inside class it is like a bundle. That's the reason why I said class is like a box. Inside the box you will be having so many things. In the same fashion here also, class is just like a one bundle. Inside that you have some instance variables, you have some methods, and the body of that method you can write. So it is the same thing, but it is a overall syntax you can see. Okay, so type is nothing but it can be void, int, char, or float or double or anything. Okay, so in the same fashion you have method 1, method 2, method 3, method n, like that. So each and every method can take a parameter list. If you don't want to pass any parameter, it is well and good, or it is fine also. But if you want to pass some parameter to that method, you can pass the parameter also, and ultimately you have to write the body of that particular method. Now don't get confused, method is nothing but function. Okay, but in Java we usually don't use the terminology, that term function term will not be used. We are just saying that it is a method. Okay, both are same. Main function, in the previous languages you have seen, it is main function. You used to say void main, it is a function. Now here in Java you are saying main method. You are not using the term function, you are using the term method. Okay, so this is the syntax of the class. Now you have to understand the object concept. How can you declare the object? First you must declare a variable of that class type. So when you go for creating the object, you have to take the variable. You have to declare one variable. This variable does not define an object. Instead it is simply a variable that can refer to that object, or refer to an object. Okay, the second thing is you must acquire an actual physical copy of the object and assign it to that variable, whatever the variable you have declared for a particular class type. Okay, now then you can do this using a new operator. So here you will be using new. It's a kind of keyword, it's a predefined word. You don't need to change it. It is an operator. Using that operator you are going to create the object. Okay, the new operator dynamically allocates memory for an object and returns a reference to it. This reference is more or less the address in a memory of the object allocated by new. So ultimately whenever you create an object, what happens in C++, can you remember the concepts you have dealt already with respect to C++ subject? When you create an object, you are going to allocate the memory for the entire class of that type. Okay, then you are calling default constructor, isn't it? If you want to initialize any values inside the class, you can do it by creating the object, just by calling the constructor also, or default constructor will just call it. By default it will be called, but here the concepts will be same. But yeah, whenever you create an object, you are allocating some memory using new operator. That is the thing. Now see, you can see the first point, the data or variable defined within a class are called instance. You have to remember this, it's an instance variable. So whatever it may be, the data or variable defined within the class, if there anything inside the class, that is called instance variable. The code is contained within methods. Whatever the code you write, it will be present inside the methods. Collectively the methods and variables defined within a class are called members of the class. Okay, so whatever, if you have some variables, that can be said as data members. If you have some functions, you can say that it is a member functions. So this is with respect to C++. But in Java, what you say, you say members of the class. If someone is saying something as members of the class, that directly means you have some instance variables as well as some methods. You have to understand like that. Okay, so that is a thing. Now you can see one example of simple class. Okay, so in the simple class, what are the things you can see? You have one class called box. Okay, so inside the box, how many variables you have? You have 3 instance variables. One is width, one is height, another one is depth, which is of type double. Everything is of type double. It is not int or char or float. You are just going for double. Okay, a class defined a new type of data. In this case, the new data type is called box. So now box has become a data type which has the capacity, or which is bundled with the width, height and depth, 3 instance variables or members of the classes. So there are 3 members of the classes: width, height and depth. Okay, you will use this name to declare objects of type box. It is important to remember that a class declaration only creates a template. It does not create an actual object. You have to remember this. When you go for class declaration, you are just creating a template. It is just a template. Okay, it's like a skeleton. Fine. And it does not create an actual object, will not be created when you declare the class. So you have to explicitly create the object so that you can allocate some memory for that entire class. Okay, thus the preceding code does not cause any object of type box to come into existence. So manually, if you create using new operator, then only you can be accessing, or then only you can be you can see the concept of objects. Otherwise, if you declare just a class, it is just a template which is of no use. So that means if you don't create an object for a class is meaningless. You have to remember like that. Class will be definitely meaningless if you don't create an object. Fine. Now to actually create a box object, you will use the statement like following. So you have the statement there. So first one is class name. After the class name, you need one instance variable, or object variable name. You have to declare it. Then it is equal to new is an operator, and it is a predefined keyword. You cannot change it. Space box, you are just, because you are passing a class name, because you want to create the you want to allocate the memory to that particular class, means you have to go for this statement. And once you have done that, it will send the reference of that particular storage or memory to the object, so that you can access using that object. All the contents of that class, box class, can be accessed using my box. Okay, my box is a variable for, and it is now it has become an object of class box. Okay, after this statement executes, my box will be an instance of box. So instance of box is not my god, you are actually creating an object. So now it will be having physical reality, because you have already allocated the memory for box by using new operator. Every box object will contain its own copies of the instance variable width, height and depth. To access these variables, you will use the dot operator. Okay, the dot operator links the name of the object with the name of the instance variable. You have to remember this. So if you want to access any particular instance variable, or if you want to call some methods using object and using dot operator, you can do that successfully. And whenever you create objects, same copies, all the copies of data will be assigned to that particular object. So you can, for one class, you can create n number of object. It is not just one object. You can go for any number of object, and each and every number of object will be having each and every copies of height, width and data height, width and depth. Okay, so that is the meaning. This statement tells the compiler to assign the copy of width that is contained within the mybox object the value of 100. So what you are going to do, first you are going to access box class using object mybox, and you are going for dot operator, and you are particularly targeting a particular instance variable with the name width. You are just calling that particular variable which is present inside the class box. Now you are assigning value 100 to width. So you can assign the value 100 to width using this particular statement. Fine. So now in the preceding sample of program, a line similar to the following is used to declare the object of type box. So box space my box equal to new box. This statement combines two steps. So you can it is described. You can just see the below. Box space my box, you are just declaring a reference to object. It is just a reference. But if you want to allocate the box object, then you have to go for my box equal to new of box. So the above statement, the topmost statement, it is direct. You are not going for two steps. You are not doing any circus. Directly you are writing box space my box equal to new of box function, box method. Okay, so that means ultimately you are allocating the memory to that particular class. Now you can see that image. So you can see statement and effect. When you go for box space my box, you will be having one reference with the name my box, and it will be null. But when you go for my box equal to new of box, that my box will be having the reference to width, height and depth. That is nothing but box object. So these things are available, instance variables are available inside the class called box. Fine, this is how you can imagine. Fine, you can go for one simple program here. So example 1. So here class box, you have one class called box. Inside that box class you have 3 instance variables, width, height and depth of type double. Okay, every variable has the type called double, and you have one more class. So this class is encapsulating, you are encapsulating main method using this class. So class box demo. Remember, if you are writing this particular program, your file name should be named as box demo, because I already said when you have each, it may be any class, if that class contains main method, then that same class name should be the file name, otherwise you may get the error while you try to execute the Java programs. Okay, so class box demo, inside that you have public static void main, it is a method, and strings comma args, that is nothing but if you want to read the command line arguments. In the previous video I already said, so the command line of arguments, if any, it will be sit in that particular args variable, and inside that particular main method you have box space my box equal to new box. You are creating an object for box class, then you have one variable called volume or vol double of type double. Now what you are going to do, using that object my box, you are assigning the values to width, height and depth. How can you do that? You need the object, you need dot operator, and you need name of the instance variable which is present inside the class box. Okay, now my box dot width equal to 10. Now 10 will sit in width. My box dot height equal to 20. Now 20 will sit in height, and my box dot depth will equal to 15. That means 15 will sit in depth variable. Okay, now volume can be calculated at VOL equal to my box dot width into my box dot height into my box dot depth. Ultimately you are going to print the statement. So system.out.println volume is plus VOL. Ultimately you are going to get the value as 10 into 20 into 15. So it is 300, I guess. 150 to 150, yes, 30, 300, 300, I guess. 3000 or 300. I just calculate, I guess 300, I hope. Fine, so something like this. Fine, maybe 3000, I guess, I don't know. You can go for calculator and check it. Okay, so ultimately you can write this particular program to get the volume of the variables, whatever the variables you have width, you have height, you have depth. Ultimately you can access these instance variables using the object. You have to remember like that. Ultimately you are creating an object for the class. Okay, now when you create an object, you can access, ultimately you can access everything which is available inside the class. Fine, that is one concept. Now you have the concept of access specifiers, that is separate part of story. Public, private and protected. Can you recall all those concepts which you have learnt in C++? That is separate part of story. We will deal those concepts later, but as of now, whenever you create an object, whatever the content you have inside the class, that can be accessed directly without any issue. Fine, this is the main concept you have to understand. Fine, now okay, you have one more example. See, again class box, double width, double height, double depth, 3 instance variables. You have another class called box demo 2. Inside that you have main method. Inside the main method, what you are going to do, you are going to create 2 objects for the same class called box. Can you see? Box space my box 1, it is one object. Box space my box 2, you are creating another object. That means my box 1 will be having a set of copies of height, depth and what is that? Width, height, depth. Now my box 2 also will be having the separate copy of width, height and depth. So if you are saving some value using my box 1 object, it will be sitting in a separate memory location. And if you are using my box 2, because that is the second object using which you are assigning some value to a particular variable, means that variable or that value will be sitting in a separate storage space or memory location. Okay, you can see it here. Okay, with double space wall, so you have vol separate variable. Now you are assigning the values to first object, that is my object one, sorry, my box one. Okay, my box one is the first object. Now what you are going to do, my box one dot width, my box one dot height, my box one dot depth. Now you are assigning value 10, 20 and 15. Fine. So 5,000, 3,000, I guess the value will be 3,000 almost if you add. Now assign different values to my box 2. So that is nothing but second object. I already said whenever you create an object, separate copies of variables will be allocated, it will be created. Okay, so if you are saying box 1, so a separate variable, for box 2 separate variable. It is something like if you have 6 subject in your class, like in your syllabus, if or in this some particular semester, you are maintaining separate class notes, isn't it? You are sitting in a same class. Okay, you are attending to each and every subject, but you are maintaining separate book for separate notes, isn't it? In the same fashion, if you are creating separate objects, so many objects for a single class, each and every object will be having separate copies of all the instance variables or variables available in that particular class. Now my box 1 dot width is not equal to my box 2 dot width. Separate memory locations. In separate memory locations, you are storing separate data. Okay, now see, you can see the example. My box 2 dot width equal to 3, my box 2 dot height equal to 6, and my box 2 dot depth equal to 9. So you are keeping separate data and it will not be interchanged, or you are not overwriting the data. Separate copies of data or variables will be available using objects. So that is the beauty of class and object concept. So you will be having separate copies and you will be allocating that copy memory location for the dumping of data. Fine. Now next thing is, so you are calculating vol equal to my box 1 dot width, my box 1 dot height, my box 1 dot depth. You will get one volume value. You are calculating second object values, that is nothing but vol, again vol equal to my box 2 width, my box 2 height, my box 2 depth. System dot out dot println and volume is separate volume. So you will get two different volume values. Fine. So you can try this program. So entire program is given here. Try to execute this program. Go for the online compilers, try to execute. If you get any error, get back to me. Okay, so before attending for the next video, make sure that you brush up all the concepts of basic features of C++, constructors which was present in C++, destructors, and creating the object, and creating the class, writing the member functions, creating the data members or declaring the data members, using the data members from the main method using object. So you have to brush up all the concepts, because in Java also you have the same concepts with the different syntax. That's it. In C++, if you want to inherit from one class to another class, you were using colon, isn't it? Colon or double colon, that 4 dots. Fine. So but in Java you are not using such things. You are just writing extends. That there are some keywords which you have to follow. No, when you write the program you will get the better idea. No, don't need to worry now. But these are some of the concepts which I just wanted to say about the class, or to the introduction to class. So these are some of the concepts which you have to understand. Go for your previous textbooks or internet. Just try to brush up all the concepts of C++, so that your Java concept, this particular unit, will be very easy for you to understand and you can score very easily. That is the reason why I said just brush up all the concepts of your previous semester which you have learned in C++. Fine. So this is enough for this particular video. Let me wind up. Okay, so if you have any doubt, you can get back to me. Thanks for watching.